江西一男子婚礼现场，女方家临时加价1倍彩礼，弄得男方一家如晴天霹雳，束手无策。
At a wedding in Jiangxi, the groom and bride were supposed to get married smoothly, but an unexpected twist occurred on the wedding day. The bride's family suddenly decided to increase the bride price by 188,000 yuan. This sudden demand for more money caught the groom's family off guard, like a bolt from the blue. Faced with such a huge financial burden, the groom was unable to come up with the money on short notice, and at that moment the bride, feeling that she had lost face, started taking off her wedding dress, preparing to leave the wedding venue. At this moment, the groom decided not to endure any longer, picked up the microphone, and began singing a song. His singing moved the entire audience and simultaneously upheld his dignity. After finishing the song, the groom turned and left without hesitation, not looking back. This scene shocked everyone present, with many shedding tears and feeling sympathy for the groom. The groom not only expressed his emotions through the song, but also demonstrated his strength and decisiveness as a man. This event quickly attracted widespread attention and sparked a heated debate, with many people sympathizing with the groom, criticizing the bride's parents for their sudden demand for a higher bride price at their daughter's wedding. They said, "Even if you were dissatisfied with the bride price before, why didn't you say so earlier? This is your daughter's lifelong happiness. A wedding isn't something you can treat like a game." This also reflected the bride's parents' attitude in handling matters. In fact, the groom had already paid 300,000 yuan as the bride price, but at the critical moment of the wedding, the bride's parents suddenly asked for an additional 188,000 yuan. This undoubtedly placed great pressure and shock on the groom. It's important to understand that the groom's family had already spent their family savings for generations on this wedding, having bought both a car and a house. The amount already paid as the bride price was by no means a small sum. Facing this sudden demand, the groom ultimately chose to respond with a song and decisively left the venue afterward. This event has left many people asking, was the bride's family trying to sell their daughter? Throughout history, the bride price has been a customary practice, though there is no uniform standard. But 300,000 yuan is already an extremely high amount, especially in rural areas, where it is an astronomical figure. Despite this, the bride's family was still not satisfied, demanding more at the wedding, leading many to believe they were using the occasion to pressure the groom's family into giving more money. But no one expected that the groom would defend his dignity in such a resolute manner, responding to everything with a song. As the guests watched the groom's retreating figure, their hearts were filled with mixed emotions, and some couldn't help but wipe away their tears. The wedding host also didn't know how to bring the event to a conclusion, and the joyous celebration turned into a scene full of regret. Most of the guests at the wedding expressed their support for the groom's actions, believing he made the right choice and should not have compromised due to the bride's family's sudden demand for more money. I can't help but feel that the issue of high bride prices is not just an economic burden on a wedding, but also a matter of dignity and future happiness for both families. Regardless of the economic situation of either family, the essence of a wedding is to celebrate two young people finding happiness with each other, and it should not become a bargaining chip for one side to exert financial pressure. The groom's family may have already exhausted their savings due to the purchase of a wedding house, wedding car, and the initial bride price, perhaps even accumulating debt, and yet the bride's family still demanded more money at the wedding, which is truly unacceptable. As society develops, the amount and form of bride prices vary across regions, but it is hoped that such tragedies caused by exorbitant bride prices will not be repeated. To those of you reading this, what are your feelings after seeing this event? Do you support the groom's decisive action, or do you have a different opinion about the behavior of the bride's family?
你下车6万个起啊！我们那边就我普通朋友结婚，我都是要给钱的，给个2000多。
你是幸运呢，还是倒霉呀？
Is the existence of some besties a blessing or a curse? Recently, a wedding in Hunan caused a big stir. On the day of the wedding, the bride's car had already arrived at the groom's house, but before the bride got out of the car, one of her besties suddenly encouraged her to make a demand to the groom's family. She wanted 60,000 yuan as a fee to get out of the car. After negotiation, the amount was adjusted to 28,800 yuan. Although the groom was shocked, he still agreed to give the bride this money later. However, things weren't that simple. The bestie was clearly dissatisfied with this proposal and insisted that the 28,800 yuan had to be given immediately, only then would the bride get out of the car. The groom, trying to ease the situation, spent half an hour persuading the bride, but she still refused to get out. Seeing this, the groom's relatives couldn't stay calm. After all, today was supposed to be a joyful wedding day, but the bestie was causing trouble, making them very unhappy. Eventually, the groom's family had enough and found someone to scold the bestie. At this point, things spiraled out of control. The bride actually hit the person who scolded her bestie at her own wedding. Clearly, she believed her bestie was looking out for her and defending her interests. As the situation escalated, an even more heated argument broke out, and the bride was also hit in the chaos. In the end, the wedding ended in disaster. Furious, the bride decided to call off the wedding, turning what should have been a joyous day into a tragedy. So, what kind of mindset did this bestie have to make such a scene at her friend's wedding? Many netizens expressed their discontent, criticizing the bestie for stirring up trouble and turning what should have been a perfect wedding into a farce. Many suggested the bride should distance herself from such a bestie because if this kind of bestie keeps interfering in her future life, her family may face constant conflicts. On the other hand, some netizens thought the groom's family reacted too hastily. On such an important day, if the groom's side had been more patient and tried to comfort the bride, things might not have escalated to this point. But instead, they chose to publicly scold the bestie, which not only embarrassed the bride but also led to physical conflict. If it were any other girl in that situation, it would have been hard to accept. Personally, I believe that as a girl, one should have her own judgment. Marriage and love require mutual understanding and tolerance. Once you have decided to enter into marriage with someone, you should stay clear-headed in the face of external interference. When a bestie makes unreasonable demands, you can simply laugh it off without being influenced by her instigation. As long as you stay firm, the wedding won't be delayed by such trivial matters. Therefore, it's important to be cautious when making friends, but even more important to have your own judgment in what you do. What do you think of this situation?
这个婚礼临时加价18.8万彩礼的事儿就发生在我们这儿，河南信阳。
Recently, a wedding once again made Hunan famous, becoming a hot topic online. The National Day holiday, which should have been a time of celebration and reunion, was instead overshadowed by the issue of bride price at a wedding, causing widespread controversy and leaving people feeling embarrassed and ashamed. The focus of the incident revolved around rumors of a so-called last-minute increase of 188,000 yuan in the bride price. However, the truth is not as simple as what the media reported, and it wasn't merely a case of the bride's brother and sister-in-law demanding a last-minute price hike on the wedding day. Nevertheless, the whole affair did indeed cause considerable embarrassment. In fact, the 188,000 yuan bride price had already been agreed upon beforehand, and the groom had already paid this amount. However, this money was not handed over to the bride's family, but was instead controlled by the bride herself. The reason the bride chose to do this may be because she was well aware of her birth family's preference for sons over daughters, treating a daughter's marriage as a transaction, and using the bride price as a tool to make money. Her brother and sister-in-law had long been eyeing this bride price, believing that they were entitled to it. So, on the wedding day, they tried to stop the bride from getting married. To them, not getting their hands on the 188,000 yuan was simply unacceptable. As their mindset suggests, they saw the bride as a cash cow that they were unwilling to let go of easily. The conflict at the wedding thus escalated. The bride, unable to bear the pressure from her family, even attempted to jump out of a window twice on the wedding day to escape. Fortunately, she was stopped in time both times. Otherwise, this joyous occasion could have turned into a tragedy. This desperate act also reflects, from another angle, how deep the conflict between the bride and her birth family had become and how toxic the family environment was, pushing her to such an extreme way to seek a new life. Some people still misunderstand the situation, thinking that the bride was blinded by the groom's sweet talk and was the epitome of someone blinded by love. But those who say this are being malicious. The bride's actions were not just impulsive. They stemmed from a strong sense of resistance and a yearning for a happy future. Upon seeing this, the groom was clearly not going to sit idly by. He saw how his bride was suffering under her family's oppression and was filled with compassion and determination. With the help of the wedding party, he decided not to wait any longer and took swift action, initiating a bride rescue operation. The groom and his party successfully took the bride out of her hell, as if enacting a modern-day version of redemption and liberation. Just as the groom was about to succeed, the bride's brother, unwilling to give up, even lay down in front of the wedding car, trying to prevent it from leaving. This was the video we saw at the beginning. In the end, with the help of bystanders and the police, the groom was finally able to take his bride home, completing a love story full of twists and turns but ultimately heartwarming. Although this wedding went through many trials, it ended with a happy conclusion. Through this incident, many people were forced to confront a long-standing social issue: the preference for sons over daughters and the phenomenon of high bride prices, which are not uncommon across the country. Such events have happened before and will undoubtedly happen again. Whenever money and interests are involved, the darker side of human nature often reveals itself. We can only hope that in the future, marriages will be more about love than material gain. May all lovers eventually become partners for life.
一起来看一下，这到底是结婚还是谈价格做生意呢？
Let's take a closer look at this. Is it really about getting married, or is it about negotiating a business deal? On October 7th, an incident at a wedding in Anhui made people sigh in disbelief. A couple was supposed to get married smoothly, but due to a sudden demand for an additional 130,000 yuan as a betrothal gift, the groom stormed off in anger, and the wedding was called off. The incident occurred on the day the groom went to the bride's home to pick her up, a moment that should have been filled with joy. However, the atmosphere drastically changed when the bride's family suddenly demanded an extra 130,000 yuan as a betrothal gift. According to an insider, the groom had already taken the marriage seriously and had purchased a house and a car as requested by the bride's family before the wedding. The car itself was quite expensive, with a starting price of at least 300,000 yuan, and a house in the city would cost no less than 600,000 yuan. These expenses likely exhausted the groom's family's savings, possibly even using up the money his parents had set aside for their retirement. On the day of the wedding, the groom was suddenly informed that he needed to pay an additional 130,000 yuan as a betrothal gift, something he clearly couldn't afford. Imagine spending over $1 million yuan already. If he could easily produce another 130,000 yuan, who would let the entire wedding fall apart over that amount? But the problem was that the groom's family might have been drained by the previous expenses and simply couldn't come up with the money. Faced with this unexpected demand, the groom tried to negotiate with the bride's family, hoping to resolve the issue, but the bride's side was firm and refused to back down. With no other choice, the groom angrily left, and the wedding was abruptly called off. Many people are puzzled by this last-minute price increase. Why wasn't the issue of the betrothal gift settled before the wedding? After all, the amount should have been agreed upon before the wedding, and if there was no agreement, they wouldn't have reached the stage of holding a wedding. Since the wedding was already arranged, why couldn't it proceed smoothly and joyfully? Raising the price on the wedding day gives the impression of applying pressure at a critical moment, which feels uncomfortable to many. In fact, the state has long considered high betrothal gifts to be an outdated custom and does not encourage such practices. However, if both parties are willing and the groom can afford it, there's nothing wrong with giving money to honor the bride's parents. But the key is that this should be agreed upon before the wedding, rather than using the critical moment of the wedding day as leverage. Suddenly raising the price, first of all, left the groom completely unprepared, as if a bucket of cold water had been dumped on him. Secondly, an additional 130,000 yuan is a large amount for most ordinary families, especially after purchasing a house and a car, which means they probably can't come up with that much cash. Moreover, the groom was asked to pay more money in front of his friends, which made him feel embarrassed. What would his friends think of his marriage? Some might even think that his marriage was bought with money, a misunderstanding that the groom would undoubtedly want to avoid. Considering all these factors, the groom ultimately decided that he would rather not get married than continue with the ceremony. As a result, the wedding came to an abrupt end, and the bride's family was probably caught off guard. Looking back, perhaps the cancellation of the wedding was actually a good thing. After all, if they were to get married under such unpleasant circumstances, it's likely that their future married life would be filled with countless conflicts and disputes. What do you think?
Many girls often mention that it is really not easy for their parents to raise them. So when it comes to marriage, they ask for a higher bride price from the groom, and sometimes they even make additional demands for more money as the wedding approaches. or even increase the price. This makes me wonder, since you feel that it's really difficult for your parents to raise you, why do you still choose to get married? If it's really so hard, why not simply stay at home, accompany your parents, and fulfill your filial duty? Why go and marry someone to carry on his family line? If you think it's such a tough thing to raise a child, wouldn't it be better to stay by your parents' side and take care of them? Isn't that the true way to show filial piety to your parents? To be honest, in real life, we often hear similar absurd statements like, "My mom worked so hard to raise me, so just marrying you like this is such a loss for me." Hearing this kind of talk really leaves one speechless. It's already 2024, yet how can such futile and outdated ideas still exist? Especially among some parents with daughters. They really treat their daughters as if they are goods to be sold. What's more regrettable is that these daughters have inherited this distorted value system from their parents, treating marriage as a transaction. What's even more puzzling is that they think this practice is perfectly justified. Isn't that funny? On one hand, they claim to be excellent, independent women, yet on the other, they sit down and raise the price of their bride price during marriage negotiations, as if they are selling themselves, and they always feel like they're being sold short. This is what our society has produced, so-called goddesses. Looking around the world, I'm afraid only here do we see this phenomenon where someone wants to be an independent woman and still raises the price of marriage. Actually, isn't everyone raised by their parents? Do boys come from cracks and rocks? How about the groom's parents also invested time, energy, and money in raising their son? It's not easy for anyone. So why do you think you're more special than others? Even thinking of yourself as something gilded with gold and diamonds? Even if the groom agrees to give you a bride price of 168,000 yuan, you still want to raise the price at the last minute. This behavior is really ugly and disgusting. That's why I always emphasize that, as men, if a woman asks you for a bride price, you should never agree immediately without negotiating. You must bargain. If you agree too readily at the start, she'll think she sold herself too cheaply and feel more and more unbalanced, thinking she should have asked for more. In the end, she might become like some gold diggers who suddenly raise the price on the wedding day. At that point, you'll be stuck. All your friends and relatives are already there. The wedding preparations are done, and suddenly you're asked to pay an additional 60,000 yuan. What will you do? You'll be forced into a very awkward situation. I've always believed that women's psychology works this way. The easier something is to get, the less it is cherished, and they may even push their luck. So, when dealing with women, men must carefully observe, not only her values, but also whether her parents have proper values. For women who are obsessed with the bride price, who haggle over every penny and even raise the price at the last minute, never marry them. Otherwise, bringing such a woman into your home will not only affect your happiness, but may ruin 3 generations of your family. These people seem capable of doing anything shameless as long as they can get money. Therefore, for those who demand hundreds of thousands of yuan in bride price, both the woman and her parents have improper values. As men, we shouldn't consider giving a bride price as something natural and unquestionable. Looking beyond the surface, we should see that the essence of marriage is 2 people working together to build a beautiful future, not the result of the man spending money alone. If marriage really becomes a transaction, it is no longer about the essence of marriage but becomes a business deal. If it's a deal, then we must treat it with a business mindset. There's no room for emotions, right? This has nothing to do with love. So, if you're just meeting the bride price demands, you'll likely end up with nothing, both financially and emotionally, and be the biggest victim. Friends watching this, do you agree with my views? Let's discuss it together. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support is very important to us, and we will continue to provide you with better content. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.